Y'all love to talk film, you discuss, to critique.
What is up, people? What's going on? Welcome back to Blood Splatter Chatter. We got another good one tonight. A little horror movie review for you. Big blockbuster one, A Quiet Place, written and directed by John Krasinski. So we're going to bring in a couple of the homies right now. I'm not seeing Steph, so I'm just going to jump over to the man, the myth, the legend, the most wholesome guy to maybe ever come on a horror show. It's Nick from Comic Culture.
What's up, dude? How you doing?
What's going on? Now we got a lot of wholesome people in the PCP family, but Nick is
Do
like
we?
the Mr. Rogers of the PCP family.
Oh, come on.
It's awesome to have you on here, man. You honestly though, you're not like a horror guy, but your insight, your knowledge on story is. I'm really looking forward to having you on here, man. It's awesome, dude.
Yeah, I was so excited when you said you're going to be doing this movie. I'm like, I haven't seen it since it came out, and I loved it. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we're going to get on this. We're going to talk about it. I can't wait to get into it, dude.
Awesome, dude. I'm so stoked. And of course, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Lynk. What up, brother? Thanks for coming back out, man.
Of course.
What up,
hell yeah, dude. Okay, I'm really excited for this one. We got, of course, A Quiet Place, 2018. I said written by John Krasinski. It's actually written by two other dudes. I don't have their names in front of me. They wrote the story and he rewrote it. So it's these two guys from Iowa, hence the setting of the film. But again, came out in 2018. This is Krasinski's third film. The other two were comedy dramas. Link, if any of the three of us was going to see either of those movies, it would be you. Did you happen to see any of the movies he did before this? There was one called The Holler, and then another one, his first one in 2009, was A Brief Interview with Hideous Men.
No,
Neither of them. Okay, I figured.
I thought this might have been his first film, actually.
Right. Well, I definitely thought that.
Yeah.
When the movie came out, you know what I mean. I think he did that Jack Ryan, which was kind of probably him trying to change his brand. That show on Amazon Prime. And then so it kind of gave you a feel like, oh, he's not Jim. He's not Jim from The Office. He does other things. And then he came out with this, and I think it was kind of like Jordan Peele, where you're like, what the hell? This guy made a really good horror movie, you know, that everyone's talking about. So we've got, again, that's his third film. It had a budget of 17 million, a box office of 341 million, which is both of them. I mean, Link, you and I, we talk about a lot of horror movies. This is probably one of the biggest budgets for a horror movie that we've talked about. You know, even a lot of the big, like the Jordan Peele stuff, those are like $5 million budgets, all the Blumhouse, Halloween, even stuff like that. So it's a big budget for a horror movie and a huge return. Rotten Tomatoes score of 96%, IMDb of 7.5. And then I was surprised by this, a Google user score of 80%. Does that kind of seem like, usually a lot of times it'll be a Google user score on kind of a blockbustery film like this will be higher than a Rotten Tomatoes score. Does the 80% Google user score, does that strike either of you as kind of weird?
Like,
I don't know. I used to think Rotten Tomatoes score, not to say they don't hold weight, but I used to think it held more weight than as of late. I would say, and a 96 seems fairly high.
Right. Well,
yeah.
I think it's because I heard someone explain it like this once. First of all, I didn't realize Rotten Tomatoes, they'll do like a different score. There's the 96%, which is just 96% of people said, good. I approve of this. Then there's something that's closer to like a Metacritic type score where it's more of like what we do, like how we rate films. And a lot of times, like I think on this one, it's like 7.6 or 7.8. Somewhere in that ballpark. So that, you know what I mean? As far as like a critical review, that kind of makes more sense. I could kind of see that. But I don't know. Personally, I was just a little bit taken aback because it seems like it's such a big blockbuster mainstream film that 80% seem low for the Google user, but a lot of people are probably like, it's too damn quiet. They ain't talking and they ain't even fucking using the words. And I can see a lot of that kind of naysayers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't say anything for the first 45 minutes of the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah. Which is true.
It's so low, I couldn't hear him. Yeah.
Let's say to the chat real quick. I love it, man. Two Gun has the best saying, slash that like button, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. Pew to the pew. Thank you, my dude. Thank you, Two Gun. Perry's in the house. Perry's going to be coming. We're going to be talking about Child's Play in a couple weeks with him.
What up, Perry?
Is in the house. Thank you for being here, Evan.
Evan.
You are the man. And Rogue Collecting. Thanks for being here, brother. So, all right. So, for people that don't know how we do it here on Blood Splatter Chatter, we are going to do a quick kind of run through of the plot. We're going to share our opinions on the film through the structure of the film. And then after that, we will get overall opinions on the film and we will give it a letter grade. So, let us just go ahead and jump into this thing. I'm going to pull up my fancy dancy little video here, and we're going to well, the opening scene. We're going to bust through this.
Let's do it.
For my money, it is one of the better opening scenes to any movie, but especially a newer horror movie. So it opens up, and we're thrown right into this world. We have this family, and all we know at the beginning of the film is that they're being quiet. We can't really tell why, but this little bit right here, this is kind of the crux of the whole film. We have the father, John Krasinski. He's taken away this loud toy from his son, taking the batteries out of it. The daughter gives the toy back to the son, not knowing that he's going to grab these batteries. So then right after that, and at this point, if you've never seen the movie, we still don't know why everyone's freaking out. So this is a pretty cool way to kind of show us why it's a big deal that you can't make any noise in this universe. So it's a really like a scene that hits hard right off the bat, entertaining and well done, kind of inventive and everything. So what did you think, Nick, of this opening scene?
I thought it did a great job of kind of introducing what the problem is. I mean, we saw it was like a abandoned town. We see this family kind of presumably scavenging for just whatever they can find, and it almost looked like, and we can maybe get into like the details of the opening scene a little bit, but it seems like there's like prepared medicine bottles, so like there might be an infrastructure that's kind of hidden underneath the scene here, because she's like searching and she finds a very specific one and she pulls that one. You know, it's a very interesting thing, but it was a good way of showing what the problem is. And man, this movie is full of foreshadowing, and like that was maybe the first big incident of foreshadowing that we got in the movie,
right?
And it definitely is not the last one. So it did a great job of just trying to show you what's at stake, introducing you to the family a little bit, and you kind of learn the rules real quick,
right?
And did a really good job of doing that in a really impactful, like shocking way. So I think they handled it really well.
Right. I love that about that. It's like, I don't even know if you'd call it exposition when they're just showing you everything. I guess there's a little bit of subtitles, but just the way that you know everything without anyone speaking a word. Link, what do you think about the opening scene or sequence? Because we're talking about the two scenes combined, I guess you'd call it, the drugstore and the death of young Bo.
I thought it was a effective, it was a brilliant way of conveying the rules of that world, or the setup in a very short time.
Yep.
And it kind of gives you like an emotional gut punch, right at the beginning to get you emotionally invested. I will say that I hadn't watched this movie. Every movie I've seen previously that had to do with like parental relationships, I have a different perspective on now, being a newish dad. But I hadn't seen this since my son had been born, and that first scene, of course, it hit me back in the day. I was like, oh man, that's messed up. But it's like being able to put myself in Jim's shoes and or not Jim's shoes, but
yeah. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that. It's hard to not picture him as Jim.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's that it was a tough one, but effective way of setting everything up for the rest of the movie.
Right. Hell yeah,
for
man.
Sure.
There's a couple little bits in this that I had never really fully appreciated until this watch through. I guess some of it's obvious, but it just never fully dawned on me.
Yep.
The whole rocket bit. Well, first of all, why they're there. They're at the drugstore because the older son, Marcus, he's sick. I never really thought about that, but why is he sick? Well, he's sick so that John Krasinski can be carrying him and not Bo in the back. That's just a nice little touch. Like, oh, that's just making that all make sense. The bit with the rocket, I just love how you've got this kid. Why does he like rockets? because to him, that's going to be the only way that they're going to get saved. And he's happy about it, saying like, oh, we'll get saved by rockets because we've got to get off this planet or we're all going to die. And then the older daughter, she hears that and she's like, oh God, like the way that impacts her of like the truth of that, but his naivety or not naivety, naivete. Thank you, Nick. That's a tricky one.
It is.
There's that, and then just the idea, like then that is the thing that causes his death is this rocket and the sound that he gets from that. And the biggest thing though is the way that this scene reverberates through the rest of the movie. Like it might be a stretch to say like every scene, but damn near every scene, like you feel the impact of the opening scene throughout everything. And it's like that's kind of what's most impressive about the whole writing of the story. But so great opening scene. And the second act of the film is pretty much just like any second act. We were talking before the review started. It's this odd, like short little second act that you get until halfway through the movie. Then the movie takes off and you've got this action finish. But in the second act, basically what we're getting a large part of, just like any second act in any movie, is an introduction to the cast. So let's go ahead and run through them real quick. We'll introduce them, and then I want your guys' thoughts on the cast. Of course, we know we've got John Krasinski, famous for doing the Jim face on The Office for all those years. And as I mentioned earlier, still doing that Jack Ryan show on Amazon Prime, wrote and directed this thing. And his real life wife, Emily Blunt, who is a huge movie star. I've seen like almost nothing that she's in other than this. She did Mary Poppins, Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise, Jungle Cruise with The Rock, The Devil Wears Prada she was in, won some awards for back in 2006. This is Millicent Simmons, who's a real life deaf actor who's cast obviously as the daughter in this role. And her and the son in this, Noah Jupe, both of them I think are great in this movie, but both of them are probably even better and get more chance to shine in A Quiet Place too, which we'll definitely want to talk about eventually on Blood Splatter Chatter here. So Nick, what do you think about the cast? You got a favorite one you want to highlight?
I mean, I think just John and Emily did such a great job in this movie. They both can emote so well. Like the worry on their face is just there. I feel like obviously since they're married, they have this like connection that no other couples or no other like people playing opposite each other can probably have. So they can probably pull from a lot of other experiences and just, their chemistry in general. So I think it was really interesting casting for her to be in it. And so I think they definitely pulled a lot of that from their personal life. And like I said, she's a great actress as well. And he's done some pretty cool stuff. He's obviously more known for his comedic acting, but with the whole Jack Ryan stuff, he's dipping into that like action lead, that more serious drama role, those things he wasn't able to do inside of The Office. And so I think he's been stretching himself over the last several years, preparing for something like this. And I was really kind of surprised about like his range and like the emotion on his face and like the physicality that he has in this movie. Compared to what we've seen in The Office. I thought it was great. And then Emily, I mean, she does a great job in like Edge of Tomorrow and things like that. So she has those roles behind her where she can play the comedic role. She can play the tough girl. She can do a lot of cool stuff. And so just pairing them both up made me so like excited for like Fantastic Four possibilities, but like whatever, right? I'm glad we got them in here. And I think they worked really well together. The kids did pretty well or they did pretty well. I don't know. We can get into more of the kid stuff when we get into like the third act kind of stuff, but like, they were fairly strong as well. But I think that Emily and John really stole the show there.
Hell yeah, dude! Like you mentioned, like John Krasinski's ability to emote. Everybody in this cast like has very like you can read the expressions on their face very, very well. It's hilarious because Jim, like that's all he did at The Office, but it was a completely different side of that. The Jim face, you know what I mean? Like this, he's got a whole different John Krasinski face, but the amount of like humanity in this dude's face and then like the empathy that you see, that same humanity and the same empathy is what made him Jim on The Office, but you see it used in such a different way. Link,
it's true. Yeah.
Link, do you got a favorite or just your overall thoughts on the cast?
I thought they're all pretty solid. The kids actually impressed me because it's very hard for kid actors to seem naturalistic. I think they both did a fine job with that. Jim, this was an interesting, or John Krasinski, this was an interesting turnaround. like you said, it was like he's very emotive in his face, and like it was like the same thing he did to The Office, where it's like he was always looking like very shocked or some shit every
Yeah.
time something went on.
Yep.
And he had the same look, only it was like there's more intensity and fear. Same look, but just different levels to it. It was interesting. Fun fact, or I was gonna say one bit in this movie that kind of didn't really execute, I think, because Jim Halpert or John Krasinski has this innate likability to him.
Mm-hmm.
Is like the bit where the son's talking to him about the. Am I going too far ahead?
No, go ahead.
Is the bit where the son's talking about, they're at the waterfall, and he's like, "Do you still blame her?" And John doesn't really say anything, and the brother's like, "No, she blames herself." And it's just like I never got that he was upset or angry with her too much in this movie. Like I get that I don't know, he just seems too nice, like too likable, and it didn't come across very well to me. But I was gonna say, fun fact, he was in like the final pickings to become Captain America before they chose Chris Evans and stuff. He had costume fittings and everything, so he was very close.
That is wild. It's one of those things you can't really picture it because it sounds crazy. But it sounds crazy that if you would have told me I thought it sounded crazy when I was told he was in the running for Mr. Fantastic. After watching the movie again this time and seeing the scenes where he's working on the hearing aid and all that, it's like, oh, I could see it. I see it more. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like his but I just don't like see him or look at him and see like super genius across his face. He's just not that, he doesn't put off those vibes. But back to the Jim thing, like you brought up another good point. Like a huge part of what made him Jim on The Office was just his looking at the camera, either looking annoyed at Dwight or just not saying anything and telling the story that way. So it's kind of interesting that this is the route that his career went. Because it fucking makes perfect sense.
He's got one of those faces where it's just all the features are a little bit larger than you would normally see on a person, maybe, and he's just like he can emote so much more, I think, right?
Hell yeah. So and then back to the kids, man. As I said, like the Noah Jupe, the youngest one, who I think I read earlier, he might be in the Lost Boys remake. So keep an eye out for that. That would be kind of interesting. He I just think he does a great job too. You see him flex his muscles much more in the second one. And then Millicent, you got to look at like what she would have to go through on set is just like really interesting, being a deaf actor. And props to John Krasinski for casting a deaf actor in the role. It's just it's interesting. And she's great too. I think she probably has the least emotive face out of them all, but it's still really emotive, and she fits well for the movie. So we mentioned a little bit about this second act, or what I'm calling the second act, where it starts out after that opening scene, and we get like 10 minutes of silence, and it's just a dinner. We're getting to know like where the family is now. We started out, it's day 89 or day 79 of this apocalypse or post-apocalyptic world. And then now we're at like day 479-ish. Don't quote me on that. Somewhere right around there. 472. I wrote it down.
Quick question. That was something that always bothered me in the movie. When you go down Jim's office, you see he's got all these newspaper clippings and shit. The movie opened up at like 3 months after they attacked, and it was vacant, like desolate. Right. How would they have printed those newspapers?
I know.
Who's gonna stick around to buy newspapers that they couldn't buy? And that just a little thing, but
Anna said the same thing, dude. It's like as soon as they started running that printer, you know what I mean? Like the aliens are showing up. But you could look at it. What up, Fable, by the way? Thanks for popping in. You could look at it like this, like picture how Dawn of the Dead opens. And it's like it's the beginning of the apocalypse, and it just hadn't spread that far yet. All these things seem to be spreading pretty quickly. Maybe that was like all these papers are from day 1, day 2, stuff like that. But you're 1000% right. I agree. But if you're trying to make an excuse for it, you could fucking say that, I guess. But oh man, it made me think of something that I did want to mention about that opening scene, because of what we get in the second act is now we're learning how everyone is dealing with the aftermath of Bo's death, pretty much, and the apocalypse that they're in. One of the great things about that opening scene is that we can kind of see how everyone's dealing with it at that point, especially Bo, the kid, and Millicent's character, Reagan, where Bo, you see him like, he's just zipping through the store. Like he's already fully adapted to the idea of living in this silent world. And then the moment right before Bo dies, while Millicent, they're walking down the train, you just see like she's so happy, like she is at peace with the world. It's because for the first time, like now everyone is on her level. It's like hearing no matters in this new world. So she is just like so content. You know what I mean? There probably had to get all those deaths out of her mind to get to that stage, but she did it. But now when we see her day 472, now there's all this distance between her and John Krasinski's character. There's all this awkwardness, and you can just tell like the reason why it's there, again, this is fucking brilliant, is because they're not talking. It's like, how good is that for this movie? Like, it fits the premise of the movie perfectly. They're not communicating with each other in this silent world, and now like they've got all this distance between the families. So basically, in the second act, we get, as I said, we're setting up the characters, and there's a little trip that they take. John Krasinski and the youngest son, they go out to this waterfall. They're dishing out some life lessons. Millicent is upset about it because she wanted to go. Again, it's because of this distance caused by the first scene. So they're split up. They're doing like the classic blockbuster movie thing where let's take all of our characters. Now you know them. Let's split them all up so they can come together at the end and fight Thanos. So what did you guys think of, let's start here with the silence, especially you really feel it in this chunk of the movie. Did either of you see this in theaters?
No.
Well, how does it affect you like now when you're watching the movie? Does it ever get like a little slow, a little too boring? Do you find yourself like being like, all right, come on? Is it ever awkward for you, or you dig it?
Oddly enough, I didn't notice how quiet that's the name, the film is until this watch. Right? Like that's when I said it earlier, they don't say anything to the first 45 minutes of the movie. I didn't notice that until this watch. I was like, oh shit, this was a pretty silent movie, like for the most part, beyond like the background noises, no dialogue from the character through voice. So yeah, it didn't bother me. I think it kind of adds to the, like you said, this world, like with Reagan's character, like she, world or words are kind of meaningless in this world. So
right,
it didn't bother me. I'll say that.
What about you, Nick?
Yeah. And the other thing they did was it may have been relatively silent besides like ambient noise and like the nature and things like that. But they also gave us a lot of perspective from Reagan, because when like we were in her head, things were mute. Things were completely silent. So like there was moments where I'm like, did my speaker, like what happened to my, like, I'm like, what just happened here? And I'm like, oh, this is from her perspective. And then it clicks out of that. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, there is actually a lot of ambient noise going on. There's a lot of things happening, even though there's no dialogue.
Right.
There's things that we can hear, and those characters are probably taken for granted. When we're put in her shoes, there's like a whole nother level of this that we're just not even experiencing. So you still felt, the impact from that character being deaf, and you can still, kind of put yourself in her shoes a little bit. And even though nobody can make any noise, she's still at a much more disadvantage than everybody else. So I thought that was a really cool way of kind of, yes, it was silent, but it could be worse. You know what I mean?
Right.
Kind of a thing. One thing I didn't quite understand about where we're heading into this spot right here was, why was she so upset about not being able to go on this scavenger hunt? Like, did they ever explore like the rationale why she was so mad?
That's what I meant earlier about, it was supposed to be the whole arc of Jim being disappointed in her because of giving her little brother the toy rocket, and him kind of blaming her for that, and him not trusting her. But that's why I said it didn't really. I know that's what they were trying to do, or that was the intent, but it never really came across for me. Like, it wasn't
right.
Up.
Yeah, like I didn't think that he didn't take her because he blamed her, and that's not the reason, anyways. But like, I thought it was because it was like, no, listen, we're going to go back to traditional structures here. He's the boy. We're going to raise him in a way that, and that was kind of explained by Emily Blunt's character as well. Like before they left, he's like, listen, it's important for you to learn these things. You got to take care of your mother when I'm old and gray and blah, So I was like, oh, that makes total sense. But then when she came out angry, I was like, why is she mad?
Wouldn't you want them to have both in that type of environment?
Of course.
To have like the same survival skills.
Yeah.
Plus, she seems to be like the proudest member of the family. You know what I mean? She's the one that's got something to prove. She doesn't want it to be shown that she has a disadvantage or whatever.
That's true.
I kind of take it as like, maybe he's he's almost mad at himself because I think he is a little bit I don't know. I'm totally guessing, but I get the vibe that like he can't help but be upset with her, but he's almost more upset with himself for being upset with her. That it's caused this distance between them, and now they just can't like squash it because neither of them are communicating about it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean, that's all
Sure.
just kind of guessing, but I do think
I can see that.
Yeah.
that is what they're trying to lay out, is that he is at least a little bit upset with her, and she's feeling that, you know what I mean? So she's upset about that. I just wanted to mention real quick, back to the sound bit. I did see this in the theater, and I really enjoyed it at the time. I remember really liking it. And when I left the theater, I remember talking to my fiance about it at the time and being like, was the silence too much? Because it in a way it was brilliant, because it really immerses you in the film. You're eating your popcorn, and if you're not a dick, you're trying to eat it nice and slow, like quietly, you know. And then I always get Reese's Pieces, so I'm trying to,
Oh, forget about it.
you know what I mean? It's like I'm trying to eat them so quietly that you can't help but feel like you're in the movie. And I'm just remembering this now, actually. It was like a small theater. There's probably only like 10, 12 people in it max.
Yeah.
And at one point in the theater, somebody spilled a pop. And I remember being like, oh, you're fucking dead. Just be like, you are a goner. But so that was,
Yeah.
it was a really cool movie to see in the theater because of that. And I do remember seeing A Quiet Place 2 in the theater and thinking that they added more noise. There was more ambient noise, so it wasn't that like awkward of an experience, but probably a little bit less immersive because of it, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Where are we at here? Where are we at? So we got this third act. As I said, this is a 45-minute third act. At least that's the way I look at it. You have all the characters split up. And at one point in the film, we have Emily Blunt's character, who happens to be pregnant. Her water breaks and she steps on this nail. That's part of this foreshadowing you were talking about early, Nick. That's a pretty blatant foreshadowing, but didn't bother me. Once that happens, the movie like cranks into another gear. The aliens show up at the place. We have John Krasinski and the son. They show back up at the house, and Emily had turned on these red lights that trigger like a warning that something not cool is going down at the homestead. So you've got all these different events. There's a corn silo. You've got Emily Blunt hiding in a tub. There's a water scene in the basement that is incredible. What is your guys like? Is there a favorite moment for you guys? Link, I'll start with you. Like, what was your favorite moment from this chunk of the movie? And we can even go ahead right now and talk about John Krasinski's death too, if you want to say anything on that. So, like a favorite moment, what you thought of the third act, and if you have any comments on the ending.
Probably third act would probably be my favorite part. Would be the Emily Blunt just trying to be in her shoes. She's going through labor, and a lot of shit hangs on her just keeping quiet, and just there's a lot of stuff working against her. And to see her maneuver through all of that as a pregnant woman, she pulled it off quite. Not that I know how you would pull off a situation like that, but she seemed believable,
Right?
And badass at the same time. The Krasinski death, I remember it bothering me on my first viewing for whatever reason. I'm like, bro, you could have tried something else, thrown a rock, or
Right.
But I get it was more of like a symbolic, emotional thing of a parent, making the ultimate sacrifice to guarantee his kids get away. And it kind of, I don't know if he survived, had that reconciliation work between him and the daughter, where he's like, he does the "I love you" while they're in the car and he's about to scream. I did like that they cut right before like they kind of in the kid at the beginning. They don't show too much, but you do see like the creature in his body kind of get whiplash just very subtly. You don't see that with Jim. I kind of feel that was like, give him an honorable end. You almost, he almost died a hero's death. I mean, he did die a hero's death because of what he did was noble, but I like how they didn't show him get like whiplash. Like,
right.
So it's like in your head, you're almost like, maybe something happened where someone jumped in front of him or some shit, or pulled out the shovel, but no, he's gone. But yeah, I think it was the emotional impact you kind of needed for these characters and like a catalyst for the rest of them to progress.
Right.
Emily Blunt was a stay-at-home mom per se, and she's got to be Jim now. She's got to be the protector, and lets the little sister grow up, and she's kind of everyone kind of has to fill in a role, you know, like Emily Blunt's got to be Jim, the older sister kind of not necessarily in this order, but the older sister's kind of be Emily Blunt's character now. Older brother has to grow up and be, or the younger brother has to grow up and be Big Brother. So I don't know if it would have worked without Jim's sacrifice. John Sacrifice. What was his name in the movie?
Lee Abbott.
Lee.
Well, one thing that's nice about it too, it leads into his death affects a lot, and we won't get into it obviously, but a lot of what happens in A Quiet Place too, which is another just like solid writing from John Krasinski. It's like everything affects everything else that happens after it. But sorry, go on, bro. Unless you were done.
No, yeah, I just don't. It was poignant. I don't think you could have. It needed that at the ending to kind of elevate it. Not elevate it, but it was fitting. I liked it.
Right. Hell yeah. What about you, Nick? You got a favorite moment from the third act and any thoughts on the impact?
I got so many things. I have so many notes too that I took during this movie because I'm like, oh man, there's so many cool things that were happening in this. I'm trying to think of a favorite part. Probably, there was a lot of good scenes where, one part that stood out was when after she gave birth, she was kind of knocked out. I think he was out trying to find the kids. They didn't know where they were. And he left where she was, that little underground silent bunker that they created, and the water starts coming in. There's a moment where she regains consciousness when the candles go out, and she looks over there and she sees essentially that padded coffin, which I thought was just like crazy imagery as well, being a dad. And so you see this thing and you hear like the little baby in there, and she goes over there to pick the child up. And as she's picking him up, the monster comes up out of the water at the same time. When I saw that, it was like chills again. And especially in the second viewing, there was a couple moments in the movie that were like that. And I think the majority of those moments were related to her and the baby scenes, because like that just resonated with me much more than it ever did. The other moment was when obviously the bathtub scene where she's about to give birth and you see that hand come up the side of a hallway, you know what I mean? And like, there's a couple of really cool moments like that where I thought the cinematography was really cool. They made a really good design choice there.
That scene.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, like in that scene in particular, the view from above where there's the light bulb on one half of the screen and Emily Blunt
it's blurred out.
It's so good, man.
And the bulb flickers and dissolves away. It's crazy good.
So good.
Yeah.
Part of why that's dissolving, I'm just gonna throw this in here because you brought that up, or why it's flickering. This was interesting to me. I never picked this up. My fiance pointed out last night because I never fully understood how at the very end how they save the day, where she's got the hearing aid, and like I never fully understood how that affects the alien the way it does. But maybe this was obvious to you guys, but the way I read it is I saw in the special features where they talk about comparing it to echolocation, where in echolocation the bat's like putting out, I think, a sonar so that they can see how it's bouncing back. Evidently that alien is emitting something, and then her hearing aid, it's emitting something to echolocate. The hearing aid is picking that up and then sending it back to him. And that's where it creates the feedback loop. And that's also why the lights flicker when they're around. I never put those two together, but maybe it's obvious to a lot of people, but I never understood exactly how it was working. Did you guys, was it obvious to you guys?
When they kind of zoomed in on the creatures opening up their heads and they zoomed into their ear or whatever a few times, it showed a pulsating, and I kind of picked up it was like based on like a reverberating sound or some shit.
Right.
So, and her hearing aid was distorting whatever helped them guide.
Yeah. I just thought it was a glorified ear, and like just the frequency that her hearing aid was emitting was just a frequency that just jacked with the alien's anatomy, but that doesn't account for the electricity things. And I have to go back maybe and rewatch some of those moments, because if the alien's emitting something and intaking something at the same time, maybe that's what's screwing with the electricity.
Right.
I didn't pick up on that.
Emitting something, her microphone is picking it up and then sending it.
Oh, so that's
what's just supposed to be into her ear, but it's so sensitive, the alien, that it's picking up from that microphone, and it's causing a
because
feedback.
it never did that unless they were near, right?
Right.
So that's the whole thing. Okay, that makes sense.
Right. I thought that was cool, but sorry, I kind of cut you off. Where were you at? Did you want to? Do you have any comments on the death of Jim?
That is similar to what Link was saying. It was just like, did he have to? Did it have to go down like that? And like,
Yeah. I
you know,
agree. I was even mad at that time because I'm like, fuck,
Yeah.
I want him to be in the second one. But sorry, go on.
but no, but
No, I'm just
I haven't seen the second one yet. No.
spoiler.
I thought the Peaky Blinder guy was in anyway.
He is.
Good. Yeah, so he hits him with an axe, right? So he picks up this axe and like he chops him, and then that's when he gets sliced and he gets like his abdomen torn up a little bit. And I guess at that moment he's like, listen, I'm probably gonna die from this wound, and so here comes my sacrifice. And like Link was saying, it's like you needed the sacrifice to give closure to all the other components of this whole entire story. There's no growth for the characters, the daughter, the son, things like that, unless you essentially, live through your father. So it was a needed sacrifice, I think. And I think he was probably going to die from that initial wound anyways, potentially. And so
I hadn't considered that in this post-apocalyptic world with no ER, no doctors. Yeah, he might have very well just died from that. That's a good point.
But he was very smart. If you saw his basement, he had learned how to,
for sure.
Like the whole ear component shit. He had like a book
right.
But he's a self-taught man.
And like, why wouldn't you have those kitchen timers on you all the time for moments like this, where you could just like grenades, you just get them and throw them in the cornfield, and then like, all right, kids, let me hobble over here and like, So
fireworks, like, I mean, they use fireworks earlier, but you could have a
bottle rocket.
Some fucking black cats on you all the time. I mean, I guess in anything like this where you're setting up a unique universe with a unique specific rule, these are the ones that it's easy to start jabbing holes at, because you're right.
We can't tear it apart too much.
There's a lot of different ways to avoid this. They thought of some of them. That's why they did the fireworks. That was smart, but it was.
Another thing.
It was all vegetables and stuff, remember? And steamed. Okay. It was steamed fish, steamed vegetables.
Salmon, yeah.
Which was cool. The corn bothered me though. How are you gonna have a corn silo? That's like the loudest. I'm gonna call it a seed. Like the kernels, that's the loudest silo you could possibly have. How do they manufacture that? How do they pour it in there? It's insane.
Right.
Let's pick it apart for the next 20 minutes.
Yeah, these are the answers I want to know. No.
I've been saying it sucked to see him die, especially for what he was trying to prove to his daughter. And that's another thing too. Like, that was his lesson. He wanted to prove to her that he did love her. And then the other big thing, pretty much the reason why I look at like why he ended up dying, was because of the speech that he got from his wife earlier. You find those kids. What kind of parents are we? Who are we if we can't protect those kids?
Yeah.
She should have been a little bit clearer. Who are we if we don't survive and protect the kids? And he might still be here.
Right.
But the other, there was a handful of other moments, just like some of the most suspenseful moments in that third act for me were when you would like see the alien in the background. I always think of Halloween and Michael Myers, like for these types of moments. And a lot of times they're like my favorite, like, suspense style way of getting suspense in a scene. The one where Millicent is in the cornfield and she doesn't hear it, but it cuts out all the sound. It's one of those bits, and you see it coming out of the corn. That's great. And also when John Krasinski is carrying Emily Blunt and the baby right after they had the baby down into the basement, and he's pulling the mattress over his head while the alien is like creeping out in the background. There's a handful of those moments. It's also just cinematography. You got to give credit to the cinematographer and to what is it? ILM. ILM is the CGI studio that does Star Wars and Marvel and everybody. They don't do horror movies, but they did this horror movie, and that's why. Let's just talk about that for a second. How about the design? Like, you guys impressed with the fucking look of this alien or what?
Yeah, it actually was. It was very simple, but not simple, but there wasn't too much to them, but just the look and the fact that they were just blind killing machines, like very angular and sharp, very quick and swift. I enjoyed them.
Me too, man. I think it looks so good, and like you don't see so many times CG in horror movies like kind of ruins the scene.
Yeah,
but this is a monster movie, so it's different. It's not like it's kills or something like that would be more annoying. But I think it's some of the best CG in a horror movie that you'll ever see. It feels more like a blockbuster, and it's because of ILM. I think that's what they are. Imagination Lights and son of a bitch. Someone will correct me. It's the big one. ILM.
big one.
What about you, Nick?
So the notes I wrote down, I had a whole section just for monsters, and Steph touched on a bunch of them. One words, right? One word things. They were fast. They were large. Teeth. There was a couple scenes where they had a close up of the mouth, and those teeth were like
Baraka, baby.
Exactly. It was crazy. Clicks. So like you have to have them have some kind of a sound, right? Other than them going around. And they had that classic like clicking noise. Yeah, that worked really, really well. And so, they didn't really.
Is that Predator or is that Alien? Who makes that noise?
Predator.
It was Predator. It was very
okay.
close to Predator. So
Right.
that was interesting. Attracted by sound, obviously. But there was that scene again that I was talking about with the water coming into the little bunker. The damn things can swim too. And they're already black. And like you can't really see what they're doing, because they kind of blend into the background and they're kind of shiny and weird and alien-like. And then it goes underneath the water, man. And all you can see is that debris in the water just kind of rippling away, and you don't know where they are. So, like, I think they nailed all the things that you need. Yeah, it has like a Jaws thing. It's like, I think you nailed all the tropes to make like a good alien monster kind of a thing.
That's
right?
another bit that I saw in the special features. First of all, it's industrial lights and magic. At least I had the ILM part.
Oh, we should have known that.
Yeah. I was on that. But in the special features, they show where like that's just a dude in a black suit diving into the water and then coming up out of the water. That's why you're seeing the ripples and the stuff in the water moving. It's like, it's the way to do it, man. It looks so damn good.
Yeah.
But
it's like Alien 3. It was kind of like Alien 3 when you realize they could swim and you're like, oh crap.
Right.
Who was the cinematographer? Because
I wish I
knew.
knew.
Well shot movie. Like there's the one right before they went on that trip. They're like standing. John Krasinski's talking to Emily Blunt. There's like a sunset in the background. There's like this glare, almost like a J.J. Abrams type of glare, but not so overwhelming. But the whole movie, just like it's beautifully shot, especially for it being so dystopian.
Well, that's why I'm surprised that it's really tiny. Charlotte Bruce Christensen, who I agree, I think it's beautifully shot. And from what I could tell, he didn't shoot the second one, which I'm kind of surprised about. I'm really looking forward now because I love the second one too. And I think at this point in the review, people should be picking up on the fact that I think we all kind of love this one. So I'm really looking forward to now, after we've kind of picked this one apart and dove into it, and I've really studied this film, I'm dying to watch the next one because I remember loving that one too.
Yeah, me too.
But let's go ahead and dive into it, man. Unless you guys have anything, any other moments you want to share. Nick, I'll begin with you. What is your overall thoughts on the film? And go ahead and let's just do it right now. Go ahead and give me your letter grade at the end of that. Your review and your letter grade. If you guys down in the chat, if you've seen A Quiet Place, which I bet you have, go ahead and give me a letter grade down in the comments. Same thing if you guys on the rewind, comment down below what you thought of the movie or anything else. So what you got, Nick?
Yeah, well, so I'll kind of talk about just like the world building a little bit in my final thoughts. I think they did a good job of adapting the world to the threat. So like we had a lot of instances where they had sand everywhere. They had sand trails all over the place throughout their property, even in the town. When they left the drugstore or the convenience store, they had sand trails all the way through there. So like the logistics of that, and it's a very smart detail to add in a world where the monster is attracted to sound and will kill you in a matter of seconds. So it's like so many cool,
and you're done.
Right. But it's weird because like you'll see papers flapping in the background. So like who knows, right? Who knows like what kind of sound maybe they've trained themselves to identify ambient sound versus like a sound from another animal that it's going to kill, because there's moments where rodents get ripped apart too. So it's like they're hunting everything that's making noise,
Right.
I thought that was really cool. We talked about the cinematography a lot. We talked about the red lighting and how just eerie, and that's just going to bring some kind of a vision, some kind of a thought immediately when you see those red lights in this kind of a movie. We talked about the baby a little bit. We didn't get into like why they were having another baby in a way. Yeah. Like I had thoughts about like just preserving humanity or just out of boredom in general.
Well, you know what's funny is this movie got a lot. I don't want to say flack, but I even read this today on Wikipedia. I looked at the reception of it. There's multiple quotes from multiple film critics talking about, I remember this at the time, saying this is a conservative film with a conservative message. And one of them is that this is a pro-life film. That's the only reason why she would want to have a baby. It's like, I think there's other reasons. I think there's like instincts and shit like that.
Right.
But a lot of people saying it's a conservative film because of that. It's a pro-life message. That seems absurd to me. And then also that it's this is a message about cancel culture and conservative voices being silenced online. I don't buy into any of those, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. And I like that a film, if you leave enough fucking open and you don't try to explain anything, you don't try to shove anything down anybody's throats, you leave the critics and the fans and the people to fill in the blanks with all that. So that's what's cool about it, is that you can apply themes that I guarantee you Jim Face wasn't thinking of. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry to cut you off though. I just thought that was interesting. I don't know if you got anything on that, but go ahead and carry on where you're at.
No, I just think so I have some. I was like, well, they're either trying to like preserve humanity. It's like, listen, it's never going to be a great situation. We got to keep doing what we can do to, go forward. I don't know. Maybe it's just Emily Blunt and John Krasinski. And
Right.
Can you blame them? Either
Right.
one, you know what I mean? So there you go. But I mean, like, man, that's a hell of a risk. And the other cool thing was, as she's doing her own blood pressures and she's marking her blood pressures, tracking her before her delivery date, she has due date marked, and the next day is a full moon. So I thought that was another cool little just. What kind of imagery does that bring to your mind when you see a full moon in like a horror kind of a flick with monsters and stuff? It's like probably nothing great, you know what I mean? And so it makes sense that would be like the moment in time where like everything would kind of go to hell. I got a moth in here. That's cool.
Oh, boy.
What else? We talked about the nail scene a little bit more. Was it needed? I don't know. I mean, like that was an interesting thing, but like take that out of the movie.
Which scene? I'm sorry.
The
She's
nail.
walking upstairs.
Oh,
You've been up and down those stairs, and no one took care of that nail at all, or tried to.
Right.
And nobody else stepped on it. They went up and down that stairs so many more times. All the kids did, everybody. So I'm like, take the nail out, and does it change the movie? I don't know.
No.
I walked through that exercise before,
It
so
doesn't.
to me, it's like, is it just a gimmick? Like
I saw in an interview where Krasinski said, which this is the type of thing, like you can feel it. You can feel that it's not necessary. It was
right
from the way he described it. This isn't a quote, but the vibe that I got, it was an afterthought, and they wanted something to really highlight that this is a change in pace for the film. Like her water breaking wasn't enough. They added that in to kind of juice it up a little bit. And you're right, it wasn't necessary. It doesn't take anything away from me because it's still like it still was effective for me.
Yeah.
It's even just more fucked up of a fucked up situation,
Right.
Yeah.
How much worse
it doesn't
can
change anything. It doesn't change
that much worse.
It doesn't affect any of the scenes after it. Other than that, instead of like having crazy agony on her face, she has extra crazy agony on her face,
Right. From what source? It doesn't matter because they both suck, right? It's both gonna be awful. And then Steph touched on it early on in the show. It's just like, as someone who has a child, it's like you can really understand the desperation and like the pleadingness of everything. It's like, listen, you don't fuck with the family. You know what I mean? Like, don't mess with the kids. Don't do any of that kind of stuff. So like that really was resonating. And so I thought, for a horror movie, I think it did a really good job of like establishing the world, setting some boundaries, setting some rules, putting some creative things into the world that we wouldn't necessarily see in other horror movies, or monster movies rather. And so I thought it did a good job of doing all that stuff. And I already enjoyed the acting. I like both the main characters. I like the kids did a great job too. So for my rating, and I'm not a horror guy, I'm not a monster guy really at all, but I'm going to give this one, I'm going to give it an A- if we're allowing minuses.
You're allowed whatever you want, man. I love it, dude.
I think it's definitely a movie I could rewatch over and over again. It's probably more of my speed when it comes to monster and horror kind of films.
Right.
It had just right an amount of action and drama and family stuff. And it's more my taste of this.
Well, genre. That's why I sent you a fairly short list of movies that I thought you might be into, and this was number one on the list because it somehow has like, it's like cerebral in the way that it doesn't feed you exposition, in the way that you get the information that the movie's trying to tell you. And it's also like, it's got the qualities of a slow burn at times, but it's a popcorn movie at the same time. It's like, that is some pretty wild combinations, like this is a popcorn slow burn. It's like, how many of those exist?
It's a hard balance to master.
Right.
Yeah.
So hell yeah, man. A-, a strong grade. From Nick. We got Manny in the house. First of all, thanks for popping in, Manny. Dropping a B+ on a quiet thing, or a quiet place. A quiet thing. I don't think that would have worked as well. What about where you at on it? Like, what are your overall thoughts and letter grade?
I'm right there with Manny. I'm gonna give it a B plus. I there just be it's a like you said, perfect popcorn movie. It's a slow burn popcorn movie, but it's a perfect popcorn movie. It's got enough. It's not too cerebral where it's just all the themes and background information is going over your head, or you got to pay too close attention to pick up on it. But I will mark it down for the picking at it that I naturally do with movies. It's like, who's putting out those goddamn newspapers? And
Right.
it's like,
Yeah,
how?
it makes sense though.
It does.
Minor things, but
Yeah.
other than that, it's really impressive. And like Nick, these are the type of things I like in terms of horror. The family element. You can put your shoes in something situation like that. Like Hills Have Eyes. It's even more fucked up because it's not just a group of friends. You're sitting there watching your family, like your parents, your siblings get tortured and stuff like that. So it's more intensified when it's family, and so I applaud it for that. Did a great job. So B plus.
Hell yeah, man. I am gonna go ahead and fuck it. There was times while I was watching this that I was like, I gotta give it an A plus. Like I really have to use your word. I got to applaud the movie for doing everything that it did. But I'm gonna give it an A. I'm gonna take it down just a little bit because of some of the things that we've mentioned. Some of the little clunky things here and there, some things you could poke holes in, but for all the positives that it has, especially, I hate saying this, it is like a true statement, but I hate saying like, especially in a horror movie. It's because there's so many horror movies that are, and this is why this term gets thrown around. This feels elevated above like a lot of your more cookie cutter horror movies with your more stereotypical acting. You're laying more into the tropes that you see in a lot of horror movies, but there are hundreds of good horror movies that have good writing and good acting.
Yeah.
And this is one of them. This is way above average acting in a horror movie. The lack of traditional exposition that this movie has to employ to get its points across, they had to be more creative because they couldn't say anything. You know what I mean? You can't just have subtitle after subtitle. That kind of takes away from it. And they don't do that. They don't just like cheat by giving us a subtitle movie, But great pacing in it, the way it builds up, its uniqueness, and then just Emily Blunt and John Krasinski doing what they do. Like it's a great movie, and it's a modern classic, man. This will be a movie 20, 30, 40 years from now. People are still gonna talk about A Quiet Place. It's because it's great, but also it's unique. There's not any movie that's ever done this before. It was such a good goddamn idea. So anybody else in the chat that wants to throw out a rating, go ahead and do it now. We got Evan with the B plus and Two Gun pew to the motherfucking pew with a B. I'm not upset. I'm not talking shit, Two Gun, but come on. B. No, I'm just joking. I love you, brother. So hell yeah, man. What were you about to say, Steph?
Oh no, I just not many movies will use sound as an enemy, which I guess is the aliens are the enemy, but sound is the biggest enemy apparently.
Yeah.
And this is a franchise I'd like to see more from.
Oh hell yeah.
Way more movies.
That is such a good segue because just like Evan is saying down there, there's one spinoff and a sequel in the works. A Quiet Place, day one, is going to star Emily Blunt, and I forget this woman's last name, Lupita from
Lupita Nyong'o or
yeah.
Black Panther,
yeah, from Black Panther and from Us. It's gonna star at least those two. So I think it's gonna be the whole family, right? Emily Blunt. I think they're gonna say that she got split up from Jim on day one because I don't think he's in that movie. He's not directing it. He didn't write it, but he produced it. But he is, as far as what I can tell, he's writing and directing A Quiet Place 3 that's going to come out in 2025. The one I was talking about comes out in March of 2024, the spinoff.
Ooh.
Not to ruin the second one for Nick, but
it's fine.
Is there a certain situation? What did they show? In the trailers, they do show Jim is in the second one. That's no spoil.
Yeah. But I can't remember. I really can't remember how it went down and how they got separated at the beginning. Yeah. The first one, minor spoiler alert. I love that it starts out on day one. It starts out and you see the beginning of what happened. I don't know. Do you remember, Steph, or anybody in the chat? Do we see like how they get back home? Do they get
Oh, you
split
know
up?
what?
I can't remember how it goes down.
They were split up because he was out by himself, if I believe, or he might have had he's
He had one of the kids, and she took
one of the
another,
kids.
and they split up.
Yeah.
At one point, I know that you get a crazy scene, but I can't remember if you ever see them get back together at that point. I kind of feel like no, right?
Yeah, I think they cut before that happened.
That's exciting that you've never seen it, Nick. We might have to.
I know.
We might have to do a part 2 of this shit right
I'm
here,
down
man.
for it, man. I'm down. I'm excited now to do it. Yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, dude.
And I think this. Well, one last final thought was this is actually a really good movie for people who don't like horror or monster movies because it's not so much about them. They're really not in the monsters aren't really around a whole lot until the second half of the movie.
Right.
It's more family oriented, and even when they are, it's not that like jump scary and crazy and gnarly and bloody and gory. It's just like it's pretty entry level stuff, man.
Yeah, it's suspense.
Yeah. But it's more mainstream, like we talked about too. So that kind of leans in that direction as well.
100%. I mean, I'm sure this movie is probably creating some horror fans, man.
For sure.
Oh yeah.
But hell to the mother trucking, yeah. Quick again to everybody that came in tonight. Evan, Two Gun, Manny was in here. Gem Mint was in here. Drum Dum was in. No, I'm just joking. They weren't in here. Fable was in here. Perry was in here. Perry, appreciate you. And Rogue Collecting was up in this bitch. So what we're doing next week, we got a lot going on. We actually just threw this together. Next week, I think it's going to be on Thursday because Robbie is doing the Comics of the Month stream on Thursday night. I don't feel like wait until you guys wrap up with that 4-hour marathon. Who knows how long that thing could go. So we're just going to do it next Friday, and we're going to talk about 2 movies that I've never seen. I think Link, you've seen both of them. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
The Hitcher from 1986 and the remake, which came out, I think, in 2007. I might be wrong on that. 2007. Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited about that. I've never seen either of them. So you guys go ahead and check those out. I looked, and as far as streaming, neither of them are on any traditional streaming services, but the original is on YouTube for free. It's probably illegal, so don't say it too loud, but it is on YouTube for free. So go check that out. Join us next Friday, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, which is, I think, the time we're just going to stick this show at. And then I will also just mention, I love how much I lie to people. I started out a few weeks ago. I'm like, we're just going to start slow. Okay. Just a show every other week. We're not being crazy, nothing crazy. And I've done a show every week since then. I think the plan is to keep doing a show every week until we quit doing this shit. So yeah. So keep an eye out every week because we're just full steam ahead. Why slow up? So, Nick, I thank you so much for doing this. This is awesome to have you here. I'm so glad to get back on a show with you. What do you have going on in the world, my friend, of comic books? What do you got going on, bro?
Yeah, comic books. So let's see. I do have some key comic flip throughs coming up soon. So whenever you
series. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah,
I love it though, bro.
It's a good one. Well, I mean, I was like, I've been fortunate enough to be able to collect some pretty cool books, and so it's like, it's about time to be more knowledgeable and not be such a poser and actually get inside and read some of these things. So it's like, let me get in there, read these stories. And I thought it would be a cool idea to share it with other people and, just kind of, go through the books that we all know and love. So I think it's a pretty cool thing. And then probably my next appearance is going to be on Rock and Robbie monthly comic book review show. Manny will probably be on there too, right down below. And so, just looking forward to that. You can catch hauls and review videos and things like that. And hopefully one day we'll meet again over here for Quiet Place too. That would be awesome.
Absolutely, man. I've always said it, Nick, one of the best personalities in the comic book world with your knowledge and your style and your vibe and your hair and your arcades and all that. You got it going on, brother.
And you can't forget Blame Fable show. We're going to try to do those on Saturdays whenever we can, sometimes on Sundays. So, check out One Collection Down on IG for all that good stuff. And Steph, thanks for chiming in and helping out with hosting and things like that whenever I can. I really appreciate that, dude. Thanks so much.
I did it a couple weeks ago. I don't get a thanks. You didn't show up, but I filled in.
Verno, thanks. I appreciate you too, man.
Steph, what do you got going on, brother? What you got going on in the world?
Besides Dylan's Horror Show every Saturday, me and Scarpad's show is fluctuating right now, but we're doing Thursdays. As of right now, we're going to be doing Sundays. So instead of today, we're doing a show Sunday, and it's going to be Black Science 2, Volume 2. And
nice.
Sunday, like 6, I'm not quite sure of the time. I'll check the Scarpad, but around that time, 6:30 or something like that.
Hell yeah. Again, check out Scarpad's domain for that. I put the link to Nick and Link's IG accounts and YouTube channel down below, so definitely go and check that out. Again, hit the like button on your way out, sub up to the channel, and come back next week where we're talking The Hitcher 1 and 2. Thank you guys so much for being here, and we will see you next time.
Good shot. Okay, he's dead. Let's go get him. That's another one for the farm.
Goodbye, my angel. I hope you have a good time. But of course you will.